Good afternoon and welcome to everybody. As I say, this is our continuing series around the issues which are impacting the visitor economy here in Liverpool and in the city region as well. But if we can just come into the first session, Sue, Joanna and Frank, it's titled Back to Work, Back to the Office. We know that the majority of people have been working since the beginning of this COVID epidemic, almost 6 months. A lot of people have been working from home, working out of offices, because we know what those issues are. We've seen footfall drop in the city from the normal levels of about 1.3 million as it was previously, down into levels where we are seeing, thankfully, a return and the footfall that we reported last week with the Liverpool BID Company was back up to about minus 23%, about a million, the footfall in the city. But we know that to get fully back into being, we need to bring people back into our commercial district, into the heart of the city centre. Those large corporate businesses, and small businesses coming back into our office buildings in and around Old Hall Street, Castle Street. And those are the key issues that we need to be just thinking about today, how we do that. Now, I noticed a recent survey on LinkedIn suggested that this was a national survey, suggesting that there's still really a reluctance for people to come back into office. And that's split between whether they haven't actually been into the physical workplace, whether they think it's too soon to return back to the workplace, and also how do people travel into the workplace. Joanna, if I could turn to you first, one of the main forms of transport into our commercial district has always been public transport, our great MerseyTravel and MerseyRail underground services, but the bus routes. So we know when there was a reimagining of bus routes earlier in the year, there was a large and vocal comment back from the commercial district about the fact that we needed bus routes servicing those. So what's the up-to-date position? We know that at the beginning of the easing of restrictions, we were told that only use public transport if necessary, and doing that wearing a face covering. And at that time, everybody thought that wearing a face covering was so unusual, but we're getting used to that now. And what's been the experience, and how is MerseyTravel, bus operators and trains coping with that?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to the panel today. Yes, it's been a very challenging couple of months. I work with the Combined Authority of MerseyTravel, and we do work very closely with our transport operators, with MerseyRail, with Arriva, with Stagecoach. We provide the Mersey ferries, and we've worked very closely during the whole of this period. We initially started by having to reduce all of our services, which is probably not as easy as people think. And then we have started to restart all of our public transport services, which is even harder than normal. We've worked very hard to get them gradually up to increasing those levels to support people. So you're right, Bill, initially it was, only key workers should travel. It was to do with essential travel, then it was necessary. So we responded to those, I suppose, government advice and with our services to uplift where we can, where it was safe to do so and where we had the resources to do so. So that's been a gradual increase for us, and we are focusing on and we are committed to providing those services for people that need them. Originally it was key workers. As we approach September, that's going to be for school children, for people who are wanting to come back to work. And don't forget, most of our frontline staff, they haven't left. They continue to provide those services. So their focus has been on making sure that we've got all the right safety measures in place. There's enhanced cleaning across our stations, our buses, our trains. We're doing everything we possibly can to keep those services running and to also keep people safe. So those services are there in terms of this group and people coming back to work. The services are there. We've got some really important advice for people who do want to use the transport system, and that's all being delivered through our Rethink Travel campaign, because especially for those people who've they've not travelled for 5 or 6 months, the services are there, but it's a little bit different. We've got to get used to a different way of travelling. You need to remember to plan ahead, check those timetables, wear a face covering, pay by contactless. Let's not use cash, that keeps us all safe. be respectful to people, be mindful of our staff, that they're working really hard to get you to where you need to be. So it's a bit of a two-way thing. We're doing our bit, and if passengers and people do their bit, then we can get everybody exactly where they need to be as safely as possible, and the services are there.
So if the question I've heard people say, well, we don't know when our regular bus is coming because the service capacity has been reduced. So buses aren't operating with the same frequency. What's the response to that?
Yeah, it has been difficult. Frequencies may have changed. Capacity, certainly up until this point, it's something we have to take into consideration because of social distancing. But every effort's being done to make sure that we can get that capacity and the frequencies and the timetables back to, I suppose, almost pre-COVID levels. But there will be things and measures and behaviours that we have to adopt to help keep those going. So again, it's really important for people to check. If you're a regular bus user, check with Arriva, check with Stagecoach. All the information is there for people to help you plan, to help you prepare for your journeys. And I guess one of the things for me, I normally travel into the city centre on the train. I've been on recently just to kind of get myself familiar with it again, and just to see it's not that different, but you just have to remember your face covering, check the timetable. It may or may not be a little bit different, but again, the services are there, and we're doing everything to get that capacity to where it needs to be.
So people were worried about queuing in stations. Is that a reality?
Probably not so much at the moment, because we're not seeing the movements that we would normally pre-COVID, but we obviously anticipate that will change, that there may or may not be queues. That's why we're saying to people, just give yourself a little bit more time. It's sort of, don't think that you can suddenly go back to work on Monday, do your usual routine, bomb it to the station or the bus stop, jump on the bus you've always got onto and get to work in the usual time. You've just got to factor in a little bit more sort of planning and anticipate there may be the odd delay. You might not get the service you want, but if you factor that in, then we can still get you to where you need to go.
Great, thanks for that. If I can come to Sue, who's just dropped offline, so I'll come to you, Frank. Frank, we know that downtown represents most of the lot. In fact, Sue's back now. I'll come back to Sue in a moment. Frank, you represent a large number of the businesses within the commercial district. What's the experience that you're getting back from your businesses, and what would be the advice? I know you are now working, have been for some time, working back in the offices in the Cotton Exchange.
Yeah, well, I think, the first thing to say, Bill, is that there's been a lot of statistics that have been released this week. So we've seen a downgrading, I think, of the number of coronavirus deaths. We've seen the announcement about GDP figures being down 20%. You yourself have mentioned footfall being down. And then today there'll be a lot of stats around the exam results, which have been fairly chaotic by all accounts. But the most striking statistic released this week was the fact that we've now got 730,000 more people who are unemployed as a result of the lockdown that we've experienced over the past few months. And the reason downtown has been keen to promote getting back into offices and getting back into work, it is because actually the impact of us not doing that is being demonstrated in that figure. And that to me is the most important figure that's been announced this week. And as somebody who a long time ago experienced a period of unemployment, I can tell you now it's the most dispiriting thing that any individual can go through, joblessness. And it's very difficult once you're out of work, particularly if you're out of work for a particular period of time, to get a new job. So I think we've got to start to shift the dial in terms of the discussion and the debate. And I think we really do need now to start encouraging people to get back into the office. Now, there may be people sat at home watching this saying, well, actually, I can do my job perfectly well sat at home. And, there's absolutely no reason for me to return to work. The thing I'd say to them is two things, actually. Probably you're not being as productive as you think, because I'm at home today, and I'll tell you, I'm on the laptop most of the day, but I've got a 6-year-old daughter running around who I'm trying to control as we speak, and 2 puppies around my feet. And with the best will in the world, I'm not being as productive as I would be if I was in the office. And equally, I've not got that camaraderie, the culture that bringing that comes with working in the office, and of course the creativity of ideas that you get when you're surrounded by your work colleagues. Most importantly though, Bill, and this comes to the crunch of the question that's being posed today, is why people shouldn't come back into the office. It's about supporting your ecosystem. It's about supporting your city. As you know, Bill, we operate across the country now, and I work with a business leaders group in the City Council in Manchester, and I think they've come up with a great strapline, which is, if you want Manchester to be there for you, then you've got to be there for Manchester. And I'd say exactly the same to Liverpudlians. You know, we've experienced over the last 10, 15 years a fabulous boost in terms of the regeneration and renaissance of our city. It'd be sad if over 10 months we were to lose all of that. And I think that, you know, again, for people who are responding to LinkedIn surveys, responding to polls that are suggesting that, you know, still over 70% of people are anxious to come back into the office, because I may be fortunate. Sue's going to speak in a moment. Bruntwood are an absolutely fantastic landlord. We're privileged to be in offices, again, right across the country, in Birmingham, in Leeds, in Manchester, in Liverpool. There is no safer environment. And from what I'm experiencing, landlords, commercial landlords, right across the city are acting in a very responsible way and making it safe for people to come back into work. So, you know, if 70% people are anxious to go back into the offices, that doesn't, I have to say, appear to be the case into bars, pubs, restaurants, particularly Monday to Wednesday. If my experience of trying to get into an eatery is anything to go by for the Eat Out to Help Out initiative, is to be taken account of. So I do think that there's a bit of misinformation as far as those polling results are concerned. But the crucial thing is, Bill, I'll end on this because, as I say, Sue will be able to articulate far better than I what Bruntwood and others have been able to do to make it, as I say, a safe environment to come back to work. If you don't come back, the chances of you being added to that 730,000 total are significant. The chances of you coming back to a vibrant city in January, February or March next year are much diminished. And the hard work that we as a city have undertaken over a decade and a half is going to be undone. I'm not suggesting to bosses, business owners, the big corporates, that all of their staff should come back into the city at once. But we've got the wherewithal to actually start to get 30% of teams back into our city centre, into our offices. And if you're walking around Liverpool at this moment in time, despite the fact that the Liverpool Without Walls project has been fabulous, you've still got in the commercial district a very eerie feeling of almost like a ghost town that you're existing within. That's not good for the people who are in work, but ultimately, as I say, Bill, it's not going to be good for those who are not coming into the city, because it's their jobs, ultimately, I tell you, that are going to be. So start to think about the longer term rather than simply enjoying the sunshine, which, unfortunately, the one thing we can guarantee will disappear sooner rather than later.
Yeah, thanks for that, Frank. And if I can come, obviously, Sue, to pick up the point, and apologies, we can't see, obviously, the technical issues. And that's the other thing about working from home. It's great when the technology works, but sometimes it doesn't always. So if you, hopefully you can hear us.
I can, Bill, yeah.
And we can hear you, that's great. Yeah, we can indeed. So you are, as I said right at the beginning, you are the lead for Bruntwood here in the city of Liverpool, and you have a diverse portfolio. Frank's already alluded to the work you're doing. You have major corporate clients, but also you have a lot of small SME clients, very strong in the digital sector and creates. So what's your experience from Bruntwood's perspective? What have you done, as a landlord? And how are you making those spaces safe for people to come in, and how are you reassuring people so that they come in and find the experience one that they wish to continue with?
First off, thanks for your feedback, Frank. That's really kind of you. To be honest, Bill, since lockdown started, obviously we took the measures to scale down our operations in terms of the government guidelines and making sure that our customers and teams in the buildings were safe. And that gave us the opportunity to look to see what we needed to do to bring back the economy as and when we could. So we've taken quite a lot of measures in terms of making the building safe, in terms of social distancing, with signage, with kind of rejigging our receptions. So any seating areas in the receptions, we're complying with social distancing. We've taken a lot of health and safety measures, any touch points, any exits and entries into the building. We've put hand sanitizers. We've taken out some certain areas of the buildings that don't feel right at this moment in time, in terms of some showers, some function facilities, some meeting rooms. But, you know, the good thing is that we're slowly able to start bringing those back. And ultimately, you know, our aim is, as it should be across the country, is to make sure that the people come back and our customers come back into a safe environment. And making sure that, you know, we're working with our customers, that they feel safe, and also that, you know, we're working with them in terms of, you know, working with their risk assessments and their risk and health and safety teams. So the measures that they want to put in place mirror the measures that we put in place, and we're all basically singing from the same hymn sheet, which has been very, very effective. You know, we're seeing weekly that the footfall through the buildings is increasing. As you say, in a lot of SMEs, also the corporate companies across the commercial district have been spending a lot of time gearing up to get their employees back into the offices, and they're taking a lot of measures along the way as we are. But we're also very keen, Bill, to make sure that, you know, yes, it's safe and it's a good environment, but it's a nice environment to come back into. You know, in terms of the vibrancy in the building, you know, if you haven't got the footfall in the building, it's not as easy to create that vibrancy, Frank, as you will know. But we're very keen, you know, where we can, is start to create that community feel. So when the customers do start to come back in, that their employees are experiencing the benefits of coming back in. Because I think there's been a big mind shift from when we first went into lockdown as, oh, it's great to work from home, we've got the flexibility. Absolutely. But now we're starting to see the mind shift is actually, that's not all it's cracked up to be. We need to get back into the workplace. We need to get the interaction. We need to have the banter in the office with the people. And we're very keen to create that environment in our buildings to make sure that, you know, the customers are experiencing that, as well as making sure it's safe as possible.
Yeah, I know we've all missed that banter in the office, and for some of us it was a good time to be away from the office, but I won't go into that one. Joanna, just summing up. Yeah, thanks, Joanna. Just before we move on to the next sector in this, and then we will come back, and do remember that there is a Q&A function and also a chat function on this for anybody that is listening to the webinar. There's one particular question which I'll just turn straight to you, and perhaps Frank, actually, because obviously you work in London, Manchester, Birmingham. There's a question about what can we do to counter the big corporate organisations who are telling staff there's unlikely to be a return until the new year. What's your thoughts on that, Frank?
I think we've simply got to appeal to their responsibility to the cities that they've operated in for many years, and those cities that have, you know, let's face it, given them the opportunity to grow as businesses over years, if not decades. So, you know, it's about having those mature conversations. Sue said, nobody's expecting people to rush back into packed offices, to not socially distance, to not use hand sanitizer. You know, but we've got to have a common sense approach to this to be socially responsible, but also, you know, our corporate businesses, as I say, have a responsibility to the cities they operate in as well. And London is particularly, I think, important as far as this conversation is concerned. I know we all have a moan, don't we, about the capital city. London gets everything, the economy is unbalanced. But London is not just our capital city, it's an international, global capital city, both for finance and economic growth. And actually, London contributes about 30% of the GDP that then has a ripple effect across the UK. So it's important that those big corporates start to look initially at London, but then, you know, at the bigger core cities as well, like Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds and Birmingham. Without that footfall, then it's very challenging to start to see cities have that vibrancy and buzz that Sue so rightly talked about. And the final point I'll make, Bill, is it's not just our private sector corporates that need to start getting their teams back into the office. It's our local authorities as well. It's our public agencies. And again, I know Tony Reeves and Joe Anderson are very keen to start getting a staggered return to work from September onwards. Hopefully that will be replicated elsewhere as well. But again, if you think of the number of staff that go into the town hall, as I still refer to it, you know, those numbers of people are spending money in the shops, they're going to bars, they're going to restaurants, they'll have a drink after work with the mates. We're missing out on all of that. And I did say final point. I suppose the final point is the thing that you didn't want to mention, Bill, but it's football and live events. Because again, if you're talking about Liverpool and essential things that are going to happen to ensure that our economy can get bounced back, then our hotels are absolutely desperate for Premier League football to get crowds back in. So big job, big challenges for the government to face. But I believe that unless they can start to be far more positive about their messaging, then we're going to stay in this semi-zombified state that is going to have a long-term effect and consequences that nobody's quite thinking about seriously enough at the moment, in my opinion.
Yeah, thanks for that, Frank, and thanks, Joanna and Sue. Stay around, please. We'll obviously come right at the end to any specific questions for you, but also thanks for that introduction into the next section. So, Chris, if I can turn to you, and obviously we want to look at how our other key sectors within the city are performing and what are the steps moving forward. So, thanks, Chris.
Okay, thanks very much. And Frank, just to let you know, I am in the office today, and I've been looking out over the last couple of days, and it's great to see the city sightseeing bus being chock-a-block for the last 3 days, which is a great sign. Yeah. Yeah, just to introduce this particular panel, where I'm delighted to join by Robin, Matt, and Mary. And Robin, I'm going to come to you first on this because I think, I think it would be fair to say the Liverpool Without Walls concept has gone immensely well. It's really brought a vibrancy and a difference. What do you think what have we learned from that in terms of what it means in terms of the repurposing and animation of a city centre? And more importantly, where do you see it going next? What's kind of your thoughts and plans around that? Can you hear me, Robin? I'm not too sure. I don't know where Robert is. The connection doesn't look too good down there. Yeah?
No. Maybe let's stop the video, or maybe that will give some. That's it.
Okay. No, are you there, Robin, or not?
No, I think I'd move on, Chris.
Okay, so maybe I'll kind of redirect that to Matt in a certain respect, because Matt, you've got a lot of outlets in the city. You've built a really successful group there in the city. You've got places in Castle Street and elsewhere. But in terms of where you see your businesses at the moment, in terms of coming out of COVID, the impacts of Meet Out to help out, what's your kind of assessment of where you think you are at the moment?
I'd say, well, I know we were joking a little bit before about the success of Castle Street and people eating outside, the Eat Out to Help Out has been a success, although it does have its own problems. Obviously, the Liverpool Without Walls takes in Bold Street as well, where we have some sites. I don't think that has kind of had the same effect as of yet, but I do think Bold Street's obviously very reliable on tourism and the student community. So all in all, as a group organisation, we only have like 50% open. So our wet-led bars are still yet to open. We do plan to open them by the end of September, because I think I do echo a lot of Frank's points that it's very much a kind of limbo state that we're in at the moment, and I think that we need to be thinking a bit more long term. So without the footfall, I don't think after August we can't really plan anything because we have no idea what's going to happen, whether we can keep staff on. We've brought everybody off furlough because we can keep them in jobs through August. However, you know, whether the sun goes in, and then September and October, especially when it's dark at 4 o'clock, and we all know what Liverpool weather's like. You know, that's when we need everybody in the city, because the economy will only work as a collective. So if we have no one in the offices, no one, you know, retail is dying, then, you know, the restaurants won't survive either. So it is a use it, lose it scenario. You know, we for one have spent the last 10 years trying to improve something that obviously Liverpool had problems through the 80s and 90s, especially food. I'm sure people would agree the food scene has come a long way, the food and drink scene, and that's something that we need to keep hold of. Now, we have an opportunity, I believe, that if we play it right, and we do have some long-term strategy. I think, for example, the Liverpool Without Walls and, you know, the council and the BID, I think would be very forward-thinking. Even Public Health Liverpool, the way they handled the Prince's Park outbreak, I think that was great. We have an opportunity, if we work as a collective, to be forward-thinking. People will come to the city, and to come out the other side, we've got obviously a lot going for us once the tourists return. However, it is that scenario of use it or lose it, and I think we don't want to undo a decade's worth of great work to put this city back where it should be. So I'd say to anyone that, you know, it needs to come out. You've got to remember as well, in hospitality, we go through a rigid EHO scenario and you know, systems that are already in place. So once you add the COVID audits to these and stuff like that, the restaurant's a very safe place to be. You know, a lot of sanitization happens, you know, regardless. So yeah, it's just, everyone's it's a very strange feeling. You know, I look at Castle Street now, I'm sitting here, it looks fantastic, it looks European. You know, that's what we want the club to be, I believe, open arms, welcoming people in. But my concern is the same. We have to think past August, past September. What are we going to do October onwards? Are we going to be able to put these terraces with heaters so people can be sitting out there in November? I would think would be essential, you know. So yeah, I think it's a good start, and I do think people want to come out. There's obviously a young, creative environment once the students return as well, and we want that when the students do return, that they're coming into, you can see a city on the move. So, and I do feel, and we go back to London's suffering more than anywhere. So, you know, you're seeing some of the high streets already decimated, and that's because a lot of people don't live there, and they're not because there's no one living there, and they're not unique. It can rapidly go into decline, and the same will happen here, and you know, that's not what we want. So, you know, I hope, and I feel that people need to come in. They need to be proud of the city, and you know, have faith in the operators and in all sectors, that they can come in and have it and be safe and get out of the houses and take to do so.
Okay, Matt, thanks very much. I don't know whether I've got Robin back or not. Have I got you there, Robin, or not?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me, Chris?
Yeah, I got you, Robin. Yeah. So, I think I don't know whether you caught the question I was asking you, but I'll kind of just repeat it. But it was in the context of the fact that the Liverpool Without Walls programme has been a great success. But in a way, how do you see that now building in terms of the repurposing, the reanimation, the re-looking at how a city centre operates, and particularly as we enter out of the summer months into the autumn winter, how do you envisage that programme developing so that we build on the success that's been created and which was articulated by Matt, but also with a kind of bit of an under message about how do we keep it going? Have I got you now, or what, Julia? Are you there?
Ding the last thing again.
Have I lost him again?
Yeah, I think so.
I can hear you, Chris. Can you still hear me?
Just about.
Okay. Well, let's try this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got your question. You don't have to ask me it again.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, just to kind of pick up off actually from what Frank was saying, I think, you know, the reason we did Without Walls, which for those that don't know is essentially our kind of plan about how you reimagine a city centre under social distancing, was because we didn't want to really wait for government and sort of central advice around it. We knew we had to kind of grab it really and try and develop something that was going to work for the city ourselves. So it's been fantastic to see those elements of it that have worked really well. I think what we've always considered was that we would start with the hospitality sector, as we've done, and then we'd begin to roll it out further. And we announced about 2 or 3 weeks ago now a sort of £200,000 funding pot, which we were just in the middle of beginning to allocate out to the creative and cultural sector, which is begin to create content in the streets, which begin to merge together the kind of hospitality and culture and creative sector in a way that begins to create that offer that we know people want. They don't just necessarily want to come in and go to a gallery or go to a show, and sometimes they just don't want to just come in and go for a meal. They want to bring those things together. And so we're hoping in the kind of next kind of 2 or 3 weeks to begin to roll some of that content out, so we start to see proper creative content animation in the streets as well, which will really begin to add another layer on top of what's already a really successful project. I think that the point's been raised, and it's a totally valid one, which is what happens when the heatwave ends. And clearly we've begun looking at what weatherproofing options could look like, overcome some of those key areas. We've also begun to look at what our kind of programming should look like as an entire sector, because I think that the era or the moment for major events where you're going to see 200,000-300,000 people coming to the city centre on one day, we're a long way from that. But that doesn't mean we can't, under the existing rules, develop content that maybe is in for a longer period of time, so more kind of installation-led rather than event-led, but which still is a major attractor and which can bring people into the city. And so that's what we're working on at the minute. Clearly the challenge for us is that you know, a major event or an event of any of that at that time, you really need at least 3 months to do it properly, to do it justice. And because of the fear that we have over kind of local lockdowns, the uncertainty, we are kind of operating under such a, as everyone is, and under such a challenging environment. We've got kind of A, B, C and D plans in operation, but I'd like to hope in the next kind of 2 or 3 weeks, we're able to start talking about some of the projects we want to begin to roll out in the autumn. And I think the key thing for this group that I just wanted to kind of flag around that is that, and I think what we've seen Without Walls has been a brilliant example of where it's worked, where there's been public sector intervention and finance, but the private sector really stepped up to the plate to support that and grow it. And I think that is absolutely critical in this space, which is that if everyone sits back and thinks that the public sector is going to be able to solve this for them, we're not going to get anywhere, because the reality of it is budgets are shrinking. The challenges around healthcare, around education, around social care are only going to get bigger and bigger. And so the fund that's available to us, you know, we're still not sure what we're going to be able to get from central government. All those conversations are ongoing. But where we are able to put stuff forward, we really need everyone to corral around it and kind of make the most of it themselves. And I think that, you know, Chris, I think that the campaign that your guys have run around kind of rediscovering the city for locals is an absolutely perfect piece of messaging. I think the tone on that's absolutely right. And as we begin to do things like enliven the streets with content, what we're hoping to do is begin to work, you know, with everyone to make sure that we actually build this into full packages. You know, the audience don't see the difference between public sector investment and private sector money. They don't care. They just want to have a good time or see great things. And I think that this is an opportunity for, in the past, where sometimes we maybe haven't worked as closely or as successfully as we could have done together. I think there's an opportunity for us to do that this time round, whereby we can take the, you know, any investment we're able to get. We really need to then get that sort of supersized in partnership with the private sector. So I think that's what the kind of coming few months are going to look like. And I don't know exactly, because of, like I say, some of the uncertainties, what some of that content will look like necessarily at this point in time. But I do know that we probably will be looking for longer term installations, things that can kind of last for a number of weeks, as opposed to things that are going to be huge one day moments. Because I think that's just the way that we're going to have to operate.
And I think what you're sort of alluding to there, Robin, is that in one respect, if we just think that we'll come out of COVID, everything go back to normal, the normal demand drivers that we used to have will just come back into place. I think we're saying it's challenging that concept about saying that we've got to create new and more innovative and creative solutions that potentially could bring together a more joined up approach across that ecosystem between the cultural sector, the visitor economy, the meetings, the sports events, that fundamentally could create a new dynamic in a more sustainable way.
That's exactly right, Chris. I think there's a moment whereby I'm an eternal optimist in this space, and I appreciate we're facing a really challenging moment in time here, but actually you can see a moment a year, 18 months down the track where we've actually moved forward a decade of the city in a very small space of time, in terms of the way that the partnerships we're able to build, the models we're able to create in terms of how we work together, and how we pool finances at a time where money's going to be really, really in short supply for stuff like this, to make it have as great an effect as possible. And I think that, you know, the work over the last decade, which has been an extraordinary, you know, kind of success story for Liverpool, some of that stuff's happened organically in terms of the way that kind of tourism, culture, hospitality sector have all kind of worked together. I think now's an opportunity for us to kind of formalise some of those things and actually have a bit more bang for our buck in that space as well. So I think that we know that central government are really, really interested and kind of very complimentary about the work we've already done around Without Walls and some of our future plans. So we're hopeful that as this, you know, progress in the kind of coming months, we can really make some big strides forward in that, because I think entrepreneurialism, sort of risk taking, is going to be the order of the day in the next kind of 12 to 18 months. And we're in a real battle here.
Okay, all right. I'm not sure I've lost Robin again, but Mary, I'm going to come to yourself now on Beatles story, because, you know, undoubtedly a major success factor in the attractions of the city, but an attraction that, you know, probably generates the greatest level of international visits than any of our attractions. I'm sure that figures up in the high 80s on most occasions. Yeah. And you've had to, as a result of that, reposition and sort of promote your business in a different way. So how are you finding that? How are you doing that? And what's the sort of context for you about what changes this means for you as a business going forward?
Yeah, for us, Chris, like you say, we're heavily international tourism. So for us, it was 63% overseas visitors. So we need to fill that gap and get those visitors who are not travelling and fill them numbers. So for the team here, we're looking at those people who are taking domestic holidays within the UK, trying to bring them to the city, and that's doing that through our social channels, engaging with videos that we're showcasing, new memorabilia, items that we're bringing in, but also working with city partners like yourself, doing the Love Your Liverpool campaign for locals. We don't get enough of our own local market, so for us, that was really important to get on board. Working with the likes of the big group, Cabin City Tours, Hard Day's Night, being that city destination and showing what we're all about. And when they're here to do Beatles, obviously they're going to do other things. So for us, it's that complete change of the team looking at what we've got to offer to that UK market. We've just recently opened our Discovery Zone, which was closed. So we're trying to engage with family markets, and we've got a new item in there, which is our kids karaoke section, which I'm sure the adults will love as well. But yeah, for us, it's working with third-party sellers, get your guide, and people like that who are heavily selling Beatles story online, but with them also dealing with a lot of walk-ups. We're seeing that every day. The team are outside on the plateaus dealing with customers just turning up on site, and we're dealing with all that too. For us, we are seeing those numbers gradually build every week. We're only on about 70% of what we usually get of 300,000 visitors, but for us, we've got to increase them numbers and get those slots filled so we can push the business forward.
And sort of, have you had sort of local residents that have come into the Beatles story, said, I've always wanted to come to the Beatles story, but never got quite around to it, but
yeah,
I'm delighted I have a chance?
Yeah, and because we've passed on that fat saving that the government introduced, we've reduced our ticket sales, and then we've got that offer for the Love Your Liverpool campaign. We are seeing an awful lot of families coming in, enjoying the attraction, and children who's visited with the schools coming back with parents. So for us, but we are seeing some internationals, whether they are living in the UK and travelling up, because we do record our visitors as we come through the door. So we are seeing some from Spain, some from Argentina, and places like that. So we are seeing low numbers in internationals, but it is a lot of Scottish, a lot of Welsh and people like that who are travelling to the city.
I can always rely on the Scots, Mary.
Yeah. And the Irish, don't forget the Irish.
Always there to help, yeah. So just, I'll come back, Bill, for questions in a second, but just to finish with yourself, Matt, I mean, in terms of, you know, the impact of this and what it means to your business model going forward. I mean, in one respect, you know, clearly you are very reliant on us getting clarity around the event sector, around government giving us some guidelines. If you were making a plea to government today, you know, we've got the VAT will stay with us until January. What would your plea to government be today, you know, to help support and continue the recovery process?
Just keep the VAT at 5% forever.
Forever.
No, I'm joking. No, I think, like we've said, I think quite a few people have touched on it. I think that it's more the long-term strategy of where we go post-October and post-January. So it's already well having 5%, but if no one can actually go out or feel safe to go out in December, then it's not going to be any use. But for our business, we just want to be moving forward. We're still looking at other sites and trying to pick them up, even in the commercial district, and trying to push things forward, because I think there is going to be opportunity there. There is, I think Robin touched on it, there is a real opportunity to work as a collective, and that you could, you know, there could be a lot of work done where if you come out the other side of it a lot stronger. I mean, Liverpool winning the league, some things like the Beatles things that are still closed, stuff like that, they're going to be huge for people coming back in. Whether that is next spring or summer, it's that battle in between that has to be won, because no one's going to come if there's nothing going on. So, yeah, I think it's about everyone working as a collective, and that's everyone sitting at home and us as in different sectors able to support each other and listen to each other, so we can get what people want and get them out of the house. Psychologically, it takes like 60-70 days to a habit. Now I understand that's why the Eat Out to Help Out is getting people out who probably went out. So it is which is again great. Staycations are starting to come in, so it's about keeping this moving forward. I think, yeah, as a few people mentioned, it's just, I think it's a time to work together and more and you know, as the people saying what's going on, you know, we're all in this together.
Yeah, and I think just in handing back to you, Bill, and my apologies, a few technical challenges with me today on my panel, but I think we've got the message there that, you know, that we've built some great initiatives, and I think the strength of those initiatives has been bringing together public and private sector working very closely together towards a shared vision, and I think we need to retain and maintain that relationship going forward. If we can do that and begin to create solutions for the autumn-winter period, rather than just waiting for government to tell us what they're going to do, then I think that would be, I think Liverpool of all places can do that. And of course, Bill, I'm sure you'll be delighted about the opportunity to celebrate Liverpool winning the Premier League at some stage. Yeah? So I'll hand it back to you now for any questions and wrap up. Yeah.
Thanks for that curveball, Chris. I have always said it's good for the city, Liverpool winning the league. Just while we are sort of coming towards the end of this session, there's been great contribution from everybody. A couple of questions. One of them is about how does Liverpool's visitor economy, and indeed how does the city, this strapline Build Back Better, I still struggle with it. I know a few people do, but actually it's about how do we as a city come back. One of the things is about the question particularly, how do we embrace sustainability to accelerate that post-COVID recovery? Now I know as a city, and our mayor has endorsed this fully, the UN 2030 Hub Sustainable Development Agenda. We spoke at the Visitor Economy panel last week that we, with our weekly meeting. It's about how do we as individual within the city embrace that, but also how do we move that forward? So Chris, any thoughts on that or any? I'll throw the ball back to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, you know, there's, you know, the mayor has, as you said, you know, made a very firm commitment around the United Nations, you know, the goals that they had, the sustainability goals. And there is a big opportunity for us to demonstrate Liverpool's position within that. What it does for me, in a certain respect, is says that actually the context of building back better for us is about, you know, not just relying on what we've always relied on, hoping those will come about, but creating new reasons to come to this great city here. And what we've got, and that's about us connecting some brilliant, innovative and creative minds across the city that probably we haven't done as effectively as we could have done in the past to fundamentally come up with the ideas that will drive the solutions that we're looking for. And I think we've got all the ingredients here to do that. And that's what I think we need to finally pull back together. Sustainability, the introduction of the kind of pop-up cycle lanes, what I would hope is the continuation of pedestrianisation of parts of our city, the opening up of public spaces Robin was talking about earlier. These to me should be part of a permanent ongoing solution, not just for the summer months and then we go back and reopen everything again. And I think the mayor is very committed around that space now to do things differently, to reimagine the city in a different way. And I think it's about how we fuse everybody's interests together there to fundamentally drive that forward and come up with new solutions going forward, which I think, you know, clearly will be challenging because we've got a lot of challenges ahead of us. But I think we've got the brain power in this city and the team, you know, mentality to really make a difference.
Can I also add to that, Bill? That
yes, please, Frank.
You know, clearly the focus naturally for this sort of session has been on the cultural hospitality sector. But again, as a city, I think we've really got to take account of the fact that, you know, it has been such a huge part of our regeneration renaissance that actually we've got to again see a shift in terms of our emphasis over the next decade as well. So we've got to start to attract investment from the corporates. We've got to beef up that commercial sector, because we can't have a situation where the city council are 49% reliant on the hospitality and tourism sector. That's just not a sustainable position for the city to be in. And again, if you talk to our restaurateurs and our hotels, they will tell you that, yeah, they're very busy during weekends, but during the weekdays, they don't have that same sort of footfall. They don't have that custom because, of course, we haven't grown our commercial market in the same way that, for example, Manchester and Birmingham have. So I think the other thing this gives us an opportunity to do is just start to reconfigure how we attract investment and perhaps reprioritise beyond the cultural sector. And I have to say, on a very positive note, people may have missed this. In the early days of the lockdown, there was a huge announcement from the Knowledge Quarter, which has basically been able to raise a massive multi-million-pound investment to start to develop some of that science and technology base that the city so desperately needs. And it's those sort of innovative projects, those innovative jobs that we will need if Liverpool is to come out of this stronger. Like you, Bill, I'm not massively supportive of the Build Back Better phrase. I think it can have all sorts of connotations. But nonetheless, we do need to take this opportunity, this pause that has been imposed upon us, to start to reconfigure, relook at how we sell the city, and as I say, attract different types of businesses and not be as reliant on that cultural and hospitality sector as we have been over the past decade.
Thanks, Frank. It's very true. It's about how do we now move forward as a city in a city region, but obviously our focus is on the city as the key driver for the city, for the whole of the city, and how do we make our city a true 21st century world leading city that will really establish a basis that's fair and equal for all. So the conversations around diversity and equality and inclusion are all valid conversations that we need to bring into it, and we will do and continue to do so. But it's how we do that as we move forward collaboratively as well, working. And pick up your point, Matt, about how do we collaborate. And but one thing I've learned during this period is that we are an ecosystem. We all rely on each other. And one of the particular areas that we're starting to work together is about how we use data in the city. So how we actually understand who is coming into our city, where are they coming from, what are they doing while they're here. And there's work moving forward now. At the moment, one of the main published levels of activity in the city is the footfall that the BID Company produces. So quite rightly, I would turn you to our website to have a look at our footfall data, which is updated daily. But we're also starting to look at it with other sources of data and to really understand that. So there will be more coming from that. So just, as I say, keep watching the space on that, because once we start understanding who is coming into the city and where they're coming from, we can then start a more nuanced activity in terms of supporting those people and supporting sectors, but bringing other people in. Now, we're coming towards the end of our call today. We've just got a couple of minutes. I'm just wondering if there's any points anybody, any of the panelists still want to add into that mix. Joanna, I suppose, come back to you, yeah?
Because just from a transport perspective, we are here to support you, support all businesses. We're here to support and facilitate economic growth. We know we've got a really important role in that. So I think just coming back to the point about getting people back to work, getting people back into cities and town centres, public transport is there for people. We've put a lot of measures in place to help make that network safe. We've got some really important advice for people. So as businesses and employers, please direct your staff to our Rethink Travel campaign, which is on the MerseyTravel website. All the info and the support and the advice is there, and sort of encourage your colleagues and your staff to think about how are they going to get to work, from September onwards. Get them to think about, staggered start times, flexible working patterns, bike to work schemes. We're actively encouraging people to walk and cycle where they can at the moment. So I suppose to support all of that, people just need to think about how are they going to get into work? What do they need to remember? Remember that face covering, and those services are there.
That's great, thanks, Joanna. And just a point on that, one of the things about our webinars, we always like to give announcements and to break news. So just on the bike to work scheme, you may well see somebody cycling into Liverpool, but that looks remarkably like me. Once we can find a bike, not a bike to cope with my fabulous physical prowess, but actually physically get hold of a bike, because they are much in demand. But yes, I will be on the roads on a bicycle in the near future. No comments, Frank.
Stabilisers.
I just need photos, Bill.
We're stabilised. And also there's an important note on the chat there from David Connor. We know who's done an enormous piece of work leading and bringing Liverpool right to the forefront of the UN. Just watch the space tomorrow. There may well be another mayoral announcement about our links to another iconic city across the pond. I think we're coming to the end of that hour. I think we've answered most questions. Thank you for your participation today. We will be back again during September. Is that right, Alvaro?
Yeah, mid-September.
Good. One of the things we'll be looking at then is, particularly from a public health aspect, a review of what's been happening so far, and of course, how we've got back to school. But hopefully by September, we will not only be back to school, we'll be back to the office. So enjoy the rest of the summer. Get out, eat out to help out, but not just Monday to Wednesday, because remember, there is great value in all of our restaurants. You don't just need Rishi Sunak's discount to enjoy that. The only difficulty you will have is finding a table, because they are all booked up. So enjoy the summer, and we'll see you again in the autumn, in middle of September. I'm not going to mention the A word.